Lord, make us instruments of your peace.
Where there is hatred, let us sow love.
Where there is injury, pardon.
Where there is doubt,
Faith. Where there is despair, hope.
Where there is darkness,
light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master,
grant that we may not so much seek
to be consoled as to console,
to be understood as to understand,
to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive,
it is in pardoning that we are pardoned,
and it is in dying
that we are born to eternal life.
Amen.
WESN.
Holiday season, bring the magic of Christmas home with WESN's Joy of Christmas. Relive timeless classics, from the laughter to the heartwarming moments that make the season unforgettable.
Hey, light the lamp, not the rat, light the lamp, not the rat!
Santa's coming to town! Ah! Oh my God!
Oh, baby.
Experience the joy of WESN's special productions, crafted to bring you new stories and cherished memories. This year, let WESN bring the joy of Christmas to your home.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
Catch the spirit, catch the joy.
Anchors away. May the force be with you.
Only on WESN, your content capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
WESN.
Hello there, and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. A very good morning to you, Trinidad and Tobago, and to all viewers around the region and the world. I'm Keaton Shaw. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program with us. So we'll be joined by our guests shortly for some very intense conversations over Trinidad and Tobago's a worrying situation in respect to our energy sector, in the sense that with energy plans, the centerpiece of our energy plans seeming to be that of the Dragon gas deal, what would our relationship with the new United States administration, or the US administration's foreign policy actually impact, if any at all, on our Dragon gas intentions or deals? The centerpiece, as I mentioned, seems to have been a Dragon gas deal since about 2016. And last December, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy, revealed a 30-year license for the extraction of any gas from our side, our part of that shared field. In that regard, we will speak to Kevin Ranrine about that. Later on, we'll welcome the president of the NPTA to speak about the Adopt a School program. The minister in the Ministry of Education, Lisa Morris-Julian, has made further calls for corporate TNT to do its part in respect to the education system, as there is responsibility there as well. And part of that is the Adopt a School program, of which details will be shared later on. And our final discussion centers around road safety in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, even though there is this mentality of which we cannot deny and we should not deny, the bounce man mentality here in Trinidad and Tobago, the lessons that we have been taught, at least I have been taught, and I know others have been taught, is you always, as a driver, not just drive for yourself, but for every other driver on the road. It just seems as though that directive is no longer being practiced, and we are no longer actually benefiting from such lessons. So we'll get into that story a bit later on as we welcome the president of Arrive Alive TNT, Sharon Inglefield. But let's start with a couple of stories that made news across the weekend here in Trinidad and Tobago, starting, of course, with the continued focus on TNT's foreign exchange situation. And the story continues. It intensifies, and nothing too surprising here, actually, though. But the International Monetary Fund is calling on the government to end foreign exchange restrictions. And Finance Minister Colin Imbert has maintained that the government will keep this system in place as is at this point in time. Now, in a comment to one of our daily newspapers here, The IMF said TNT's foreign exchange rates are not consistent with the fund's articles of agreement. The IMF comment follows heightened concerns, of course, about foreign exchange supplies here in TNT. Now, the minister indicated that the calls for greater flexibility in our foreign exchange rates is not necessarily something new. It is something that the IMF has called for since 2012. He pointed out that the Article 5 report indicated since 2012 that TNT's exchange rate should be allowed to fluctuate within a wider band, but the then People's Partnership government indicated at that time that there were no intentions to actually float the exchange rate or fluctuate it through a wider band at that particular time. The minister has argued that any devaluation will cause a massive spike in the cost of living, making everything more expensive. He also stated it will not create any additional US dollars for the country or make Forex readily available for ordinary citizens. I've got news for you, Minister. Forex is already not readily available for ordinary citizens. You can't get cash. It's very difficult to get cash, of course, but even your credit card limit has been slashed dramatically. So that is what is taking place in respect to foreign exchange for ordinary citizens, such as myself, such as my colleagues in studios, such as my guests who are joining me on the program this morning, but not necessarily. Well, I wonder what extraordinary citizens are considered. I suppose businessmen and government ministers. I don't know. But the minister also needs to understand that while the point for devaluation will make things a lot more expensive, things ain't necessarily getting cheaper with the situation that we find ourselves in. Plus, let's be honest with ourselves, TNT finds itself operating at black market costs. Right now, the black market is what is really ruling the foreign exchange supply, the trade in foreign exchange, if I will say that. Simply because it's so difficult for people to get foreign exchange from the banks, they're looking at other sources. People are buying foreign exchange at $8. People are selling foreign exchange at $8. Recently, somebody said that their family needed emergency surgery and they had US to sell, but they were not selling it for less than $10, 10 TT for $1. And that's the message I received. And I was incredibly shocked, but that's just the situation that we find ourselves in. So I'm not arguing against the minister's reasoning. In that regard, I very much understand. However, in respect to the justification put forward, it's a totally different question in itself. And it's a conversation that we need a better understanding of. What are Trinidad and Tobago's obligations to the IMF as a signatory to the Article 5 agreement? What, if any at all, policies do the Trinidad and Tobago do they have to adhere to as it relates to the Articles of Agreement? And furthermore, because Trinidad and Tobago is not under an IMF program, do we have any obligations at all in that regard, in that sense? So, as I said, the story continues, not necessarily anything new, the same old story in respect to the IMF and their concerns about our foreign exchange restrictions, and the minister's response and justification as to why it is TNT at this point in time will not see any sort of fluctuation or flotation when it comes to our exchange rate. Moving on now to another story that continues, and it is in relation to the transformation of the Water and Sewerage Authority. According to the Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzalez, WASA is in the process of transformation. Now, what would he define as being in the process of transformation? Well, there have already been improvements as it relates to simple things such as staffing and training, to major things such as the identification of projects and the implementation / execution of those projects. He still believes that there is a long way to go. He also believes that there is greater accountability within the public utilities, such as the current board actually holding managers more accountable and reporting directly on a consistent basis to the Minister of Public Utilities. He also believes that his relationship with the Water and Sewerage Authority has also been a major part of this transformation, where he is constantly, of course, in touch and in the know of what is happening within the public utility. Now, that is something that should have been in place all the time, but if it was not in place before, of course, kudos to the Minister for that. But beyond that, one of the major sticking points for transformation is whether or not staffing will remain the same. Yeah, that has been question marked. What is going to happen in respect to the bloated staffing at the Water and Sewage Authority? Are we going to see people being retrenched? Are we going to see workers losing their jobs? Those question marks remain. Now, one will argue at this particular time it's going to be very unpopular for any such decisions to be made. But does it need to be made? Is it necessary for the transformation of the public utility? Another part of the transformation of WASA, of course, is the implementation of its capital investment budget. Now, according to the Water and Sewer Authority and the Public Utilities Minister, in December 2020, the IDB approved a US $80 million loan to boost the efficiency, quality, sustainability, and resilience of TNT's drinking water and water security. Now, up until October of 2024, only 20% of that loan has been drawn down. In fact, it is part of a bigger US $350 million additional credit line for Trinidad and Tobago and its National Water Sector Transformation Program. So, of course, money is being pumped into the Water and Sewage Authority from a multi-million-dollar US credit facility that is being used to implement many projects. And according to the Minister, from 2020 to 2024, you've seen an improvement in the implementation of projects by about 85%. In other words, when a project has been identified and it is part of their annual plans, the Water and Sewage Authority, at least 85% of that gets done. Now, that's just a rough figure that the minister is giving at the top of his head, of course. But he's claiming that prior to him becoming Public Utilities Minister, only 20% of the work that was identified as being necessary needed was actually executed and put into place. So, if the figures, according to the Minister of Public Utilities, are accurate, one can't argue about that. That is really good. However, more so, I'm curious in respect to the Minister's statements, and I hope I'm not taking it out of context, but this is according to reporting from the same daily newspaper who spoke on water transformation. Well, the Minister is suggesting that by the next general election, whenever that may be, that 85% of TNT should have a 24/7 water supply. Now, the Minister has argued before that transformation, according to some citizens in TNT, is only when they see water flowing in their taps on a 24/7 basis. Well, arguably, that's the biggest point of the Water and Sewage Authority. That's the biggest responsibility of the Water and Sewage Authority, isn't it? To ensure that there is an adequate supply of water. The thing is, what does the utility equate to an adequate supply versus what citizens equate to equal to an adequate supply? My apologies. For example, this morning I woke up, and in preparing to do the show this morning, of course, you go through your morning routine. You have your cup of coffee, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, etc. Guess what? I had no water. I had no water. Thankfully, I've had to invest in a couple water tanks and a water pump for that very same situation that has plagued my area where I reside for a number of years. So I have that facility available, but not everyone in Trinidad and Tobago has that facility available because not everyone in Trinidad and Tobago could afford that facility. It's extremely expensive. The cost of purchasing a water tank, the cost of installation, of course, the cost of electricity associated with the constant use of a pump, and the cost of maintenance overall. Plus, there is this thing with the Water and Sewage Authority where you have water, but sometimes the pressure is incredibly low, and then the pressure is incredibly high. And there have been problems when there's no regulation of pressure that it actually affects your plumbing systems internally. That has happened to me as well. I'm sure that's happened to many people. So much so that a pressure regulator was installed and the water pressure was so high, it actually broke the pressure regulator. Yeah, that's not even a joke. It lasted a couple months, and then, so I don't know if it was a faulty pressure regulator, but I can't help suspect that because of the high pressures associated with water at times, that happened as well. So, quite storied what is taking place with the Water and Sewage Authority and their transformation. Now, on the other aspect, there's the other public utility, which is TNTech, and they pride themselves on really being the best and most efficient. I'm just asking a question and putting it out there. In the last few months, have you, as a citizen, as a paying TNTech customer, on a daily basis experienced significant numbers of surges in your electrical supply? Because I've been speaking to people, not just in my area, but across TNT, who have been telling me on a daily basis, they can count at least 3 or 4 times that there is either a drop or a surge in electricity. And if it wasn't for surge protectors, they don't know what it would be in respect to their devices, whether it be in their refrigerators, their appliances, or just having your phone or your computer plugged into an electrical outlet while it's being charged. So that is very, very concerning. And some people have said it's nothing new. They've grown accustomed to it. I say it doesn't matter. That should not be happening. What is causing that, TNTech? And I hope that we do get some answer in respect to that concern in time to come. Now, moving forward to our last story that we'll cover this morning, before hopefully welcoming our first guest to the program. It's another shooting in Trinidad and Tobago. Popular liming spots, of course, are now becoming very much part of the entire conversation. There was a robbery at Trotters on Thursday night at 10:30. According to information, the restaurant was in the process of closing up, but armed men saw it as an opportunity to enter the restaurant and rob a group of patrons. They made their escape, but police responded and were able to capture at least one of the assailants. So good news in respect to the police responding and capturing at least one of the assailants. But again, just look at what is happening. Trotters, a popular restaurant on Marva Road, becoming the target as well. And this is going to continue, ladies and gentlemen. I am not predicting it. I am telling you it's going to continue simply because that's the trend now. The other story that I'm hearing is that 3 teenagers were shot along Arapita Avenue on Sunday morning. These teenagers, all 17 years of age, 1 man and 2 women, sustained non-life-threatening injuries as they were lying at the corner of Alberta Street and Arapita Avenue around 6:05 a.m. Now, they were taken to the St. James Infirmary where they were treated, but no motive has been given for the shooting as yet. And that's incredible, that these areas, that these spots, they're so popular, they're so crowded at times. And again, nobody cares. Crime seems to be so attractive in Trinidad and Tobago. It seems as though criminals understand that they have rights in Trinidad and Tobago. So you know what? We don't care about anybody else. And that is going to continue to happen. What they say, with Christmas and the onset of Carnival right after, criminal activity continues, criminal activity increases. But the Minister of National Security has been a bit quiet these days. He's decided, I ain't taking any more pounding from the public. I've got to focus on my candidacy, of course, for Laventille West. She's having some slight problems there, nothing too major, just some slight problems in respect to confidence from the PNM party groups in that area. But he says, I'll take a sit back. I'm not taking any pounding anymore from the public. I'll let the Minister of Finance be the main focus right now in respect to the foreign exchange situation. So that's what Fitzgerald is doing. Because let's be honest with you. You really can't say anything at this time that is going to bring any level of satisfaction, public confidence, and trust in him as the Minister of National Security and in his actions, or all that he's done as Minister of National Security. In fact, the Minister of National Security responsible for police, whatever that may be, is being a bit more active. So we'll give him a chance and see what goes on there. Well, the other part of this story, which really confused me, is that 3 17-year-old teenagers, 1 man and 2 women, were liming on Arapita Avenue at 6:05 in the morning. Now, everybody's different. I can't tell people how to live their life. But what are 3 teenagers who are not even of the legal age limit as yet to be recognized as adults. What are they doing liming at 6:05 a.m. on Arapita Avenue on a Sunday morning? Because even if you want to make the argument, well, they were probably patronizing nightclubs or bars the night before. They're 17 years old. They're not supposed to be allowed to patronize these establishments. Nobody said they can't enter. They're not supposed to be consuming alcohol. At least I hope that they weren't consuming alcohol. Unless they woke up really early to go to the beach and decided they're going to make a stop on the way. At 6:05 a.m., I really didn't know that they had bars open on the avenue at 6:05 a.m. in the morning. Whatever they were doing, take some advice from an individual who is not too many years older than you are, but still is very much understanding and mature of the situation. Stay in your bed. 6:05 a.m. on a Sunday morning, unless you're getting up to go to the beach, go to church, or go to market. Stay in your bed. I really just don't understand. And funny enough, that is the biggest part of the story that confused me more than anything else. Sometimes you have to help yourself, ladies and gentlemen, and you have to be smart about it. And some might say, stop being so paranoid and stop being so scared. You have to continue to live your life. No, it's not a matter of being paranoid and scared. It's a matter of being cautious and giving myself the best chance of not being the target of any other criminal or any criminal in Transvaal for that fact. I will do what is necessary. And I know at 6:05 a.m. on a Sunday morning, unless I'm getting up for church, the market, or go to the beach, you ain't finding me liming anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on the program. When we return, hopefully we'll welcome our first guest this morning. Stay with us.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus, quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
This holiday season, Bring the magic of Christmas home with WESN's Joy of Christmas. Relive timeless classics from the laughter to the heartwarming moments that make the season unforgettable.
Hey, light the lamp, not the rat, light the lamp, not the rat!
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God!
Oh, baby.
Experience the joy of WESN special productions, crafted to bring you new stories and cherished memories. This year, let WESN bring the joy of Christmas to your home.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
Catch the spirit, catch the joy.
Anchors away. May the force be with you.
Only on WESN, your content capital.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for staying with us this morning as we get into our first conversation with our first guest, focusing, of course, on the Dragon Gas deal and the presidential election in the United States, which took place last week. Donald Trump, of course, being elected the next president of the United States, the 47th president of the United States. Now, energy bosses in Trinidad and Tobago have expressed some concern, but are in a position at this time to not say much further. In fact, it's a wait-and-see approach that has to be adopted, according to some. But in an article written on June 2nd of this year, June 2nd, 2024, former Minister of Energy and Principal Energy Consultant Kevin Ramnine stated that the Rowley administration has made the natural gas from Venezuela the centerpiece of its energy policy. He indicated to this end, the government of TNT has pursued the Dragon Gas deal since 2016, and in December of 2023, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy displayed a 30-year license between Venezuela's PDVSA and Shell NGC. However, thus far, no one knows or no one can say with certainty when Dragon's natural gas will arrive in TNT. And is that last point, when no one can say when it could arrive in TNT, is that concretized a bit more by the recent elections in the United States? I'm joined by Mr. Ramnine this morning. Good morning, sir, and welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Ramnine, this article written just a couple months ago states that there's uncertainty in respect to the Dragon Gas deal and when gas will actually arrive from such a deal. Are you concerned that the recent re-election of President Trump as the 47th president of the United States actually just probably exacerbates this point or exacerbates this concern even further?
Are you hearing me?
I can hear you clearly, sir. We can see.
Good. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, well, so the election was 6 days ago, and the result is now done and dusted. President Trump won by a significant margin. His final electoral college count was 312 versus Kamala Harris's 225. He also won the popular vote. The Republican Party won the Senate. They're on the brink of controlling the House of Representatives. And of course, they control the White House. So the Republican Party wields a degree of power in Washington that has not been so concentrated in one party for a while. President Trump, of course, has his track record of the first term, 2016 to 2021. We expect that there would be some deviation from that. Two of the persons who were involved in his foreign policy in that period have been told they will not be part of the cabinet going forward. Mike Pompeo, who was Secretary of State, and Nikki Haley, who was Ambassador to the United Nations. With regard to Venezuela, it's very difficult to ascertain exactly what the administration in Washington would do with regard to Venezuela. The last time they were there were a number of attempts to remove the Maduro administration, there was a recognition of Juan Guaido. There was, the recognition of Juan Guaido, not only by the US, but by, countries all over the Western world, European Union and so on. We don't know what approach will be taken this time. We know that he has said that he intends to undertake the largest deportation in the history of the United States. And we know that there are probably now millions of undocumented Venezuelans in the United States. So is it that he's going, to deport them, you would have to have the cooperation of the Venezuelan government, because they would have to receive them in the airport. So I don't know if there would be some sort of collaboration there and how that would affect the Dragon deal. There's also the issue of who is going to be the Secretary of State, who would lead the implementation of the foreign policy of the United States. And one of the names that has been circulating in that regard is Marco Rubio, who is a senator from Florida. And he has been pretty vocal in his criticism of the Venezuelan government. The other factor, apart from Rubio, is the fact that the Republicans are now winning Florida by comfortable majorities of around 8 points. It is what we would call a safe seat in Trinidad for them. And part, I think, of that healthy margin of victory that they've been able to secure in Florida is because of the support of the Cuban community and the Venezuelan community. So you would have persons in those communities who would be lobbying for the imposition of even harsher sanctions. And there are already sanctions on Venezuela put by the Biden administration. They were relaxed, you recall, sometime last year when there was something called the Barbados, a meeting in Barbados, where Venezuela promised to be part of a roadmap to free and fair elections. Of course, that never happened. In fact, the complete opposite happened, and there was an election which was embroiled in controversy and resulted in the leader of the party that won, that say they won the election and have published a lot of documents showing they won the election. He had to go into exile in Spain, Mr. Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia. And then there's Maria Corina Machado, who is still in Venezuela and so on. So one doesn't know where America's foreign policy with regard to Venezuela would land under Donald Trump. I just gave you a number of the moving parts there that could impact where it would land. With regard to his energy policy, that is a bit more clear. He has been, very clear and very articulate on what he will do. There is a ban on new LNG export terminals in the United States that was put by the Biden administration about a year ago. He has his plan, of course, would be to remove that as soon as possible. And you would note that in his telephone call with Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union, she asked him for LNG. She said, Europe needs America's LNG to replace the Russian LNG. And of course, he's going to see that as a business opportunity, because that's how his mind operates, like a businessman. So LNG is going to be a big growth industry in the United States under him. And I think that is going to further push prices down and affect us. The other thing is that he's promised to roll back the regulations on the oil industry that were put by the Biden administration that were linked to the climate change agenda and so on. That is only going to do one thing. It's going to increase American oil production from where it is right now. It's already supercharged. It's 13 million barrels of oil per day, the highest in world history for any one country. That is probably going to go to, some people think that could go to as high as 20 million barrels of oil per day. So
why does the United States, and a boost to its drilling in respect to its energy sector, extraction and export, Why is that of concern to TNT in particular?
Well, prices, it means more oil on the world market, which means prices will be under pressure. I saw somebody sent me something on WhatsApp saying that Citibank believes that oil could go to $60 a barrel pretty soon. It's now about $72 a barrel. Our problem in Trinidad is that, to me, the price of oil is helpful for us in Trinidad, but the real issue in Trinidad is about very low levels of production. It's now averaging about 50,000 barrels of oil per day. The Minister of Finance in his press release last week said that it should improve, but improve by how much? It might improve by a couple thousand barrels of oil per day. That is not going to cause any significant change to our revenue position in Trinidad. So our issue in Trinidad, which I have said for the last 9 years consistently, is the production of oil and natural gas. It is not where it should be. It's directly affecting our forex. That is what creates the forex problem in Trinidad. Nothing else but that. It's not a distribution problem. You can't distribute what you don't have, right? If you have one apple, there's only so much ways you could slice that apple to distribute it to 10 people. But if you have 5 apples, you probably have ease of distribution would improve. So with the prices trending, the trend with prices seems to be heading south. Even before the Trump victory on the 5th of November, the prices seem to have been heading south. And the reasons for that is that there is this increase in supply from what we call non-OPEC countries. And this increase is being driven by the United States, Guyana, and Brazil. And those are countries all located in our hemisphere and not too far from us. And at the same time, you have the Chinese economy not doing as well post-COVID than was expected. And one of the difficulties that I think China has faced is that their lockdown, you will recall, went on for a pretty long time. And I mean, so that lockdown, and you see, the thing is, Mr. Shah, these lockdowns during the COVID period that ran from 2020 to, let's say, 2021 in the case of Trinidad, because we started to open back the economy in 2021, but we didn't fully open the economy. Remember, there were these lingering restrictions, right? And you had, restrictions continuing after the borders opened. China did the same thing. What we are seeing with the political changes in many Western countries, we're seeing political changes in England. We saw, the conservative government be voted out. But first they lost power for the first time since 2007. We've seen where President Trump has come back and the Biden administration suffered a major defeat. We're seeing the polls in Canada. It doesn't look good for Justin Trudeau. It looks like he's on the way out. And the opposition leader there, Mr. Poilievre, is gaining ground, and the margin between him and Trudeau is pretty big. So a lot of this political fallout in the Western world has to do France. France, President Macron is, under significant threat from everybody who's opposed to him. A lot of this political fallout is because of the impacts of those COVID lockdowns. I think the same thing applies to us in Trinidad. We are not immune from that. And I think what has been happening in the US, in Canada, in England, in France, and so on, and Germany, the German government is on the brink of collapse, or may have collapsed already because they had an impasse and their government is made up of a coalition. That is not something which we are immune from. The impacts, Trinidad and Tobago's economy has not recovered, not the country, not the health of the people. The GDP, the real GDP of Trinidad and Tobago has not yet recovered, has not gone back yet to its 2019 levels. So our GDP is probably 155 153 billion, and our post-COVID number was about 160. I'm pretty sure most CARICOM countries would have definitely by now have, certainly Guyana, but that's an extraordinary situation there with oil production. So what has been happening with the fall of all these governments in the Western world is there's a relationship between that and the COVID lockdowns and the economic impact of the COVID lockdowns, inflation in the United States. So Donald Trump, President Trump, has a pretty tall order ahead of him, but he controls every organ of governance in Washington, D.C. So he is a lot more powerful than he was in 2016 to 2021. And he doesn't have COVID to contend with. He was the president when COVID started in 2020. So it's interesting times with regard to world trade. Of course, he is committed to rebuilding the American manufacturing sector. The 3 states that pushed him into the White House ultimately are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which are all what we call the Rust Belt states. They are located along the Great Lakes between Canada and the United States, and that was where the early industrialization of the United States began, the coal industry, the steel industry, the car industry. He has committed to rebuild those states.
I'm just interjecting here for a second, and so I understand the points that you have made, because we have to observe these things globally. But at this particular point, noticing that TNT's energy sector, we've seen a decline in production. Of course, we're seeing a decline in prices, energy prices globally. And now with TNT in particular, our economy is not necessarily at pre-pandemic levels. If anything, it is stagnant.
Correct.
At this particular point, what can you see, or what can you see in respect to our energy sector and the efforts by energy bosses to try and...
Well, what this means, and you see, I want to come back to what is the big issue of the day. And the big issue of the day is the issue with foreign exchange. And I don't want to get alarmist and say that we are in a crisis, but one can't escape the conclusion that we are heading there. Because every time I open the papers, a bank is curtailing credit card use in this country by reducing the amount of US dollars you could use, by reducing a limit and by reducing the amount of cycles that you could, because people would replenish their card and use it again and so on. So they're reducing the amount of cycles, and they're reducing the limits. And it's because if you read what RBC said, RBC hit the nail on the head. RBC said we don't have supply to meet demand. And the reason we don't have supply is that the 2 channels via which US dollars enter the country's commercial banks have dried up. Channel number 1 is when oil and gas companies pay taxes and royalties in US dollars. Channel number 2 is when members of the public, meaning companies in the main, and meaning energy companies, convert US dollars to TT dollars. Now, why would they do that? Why would somebody want to sell US dollars to the banks? And it's because they need US dollars, they need TT dollars to pay taxes, because energy companies pay VAT in TT dollars, and VAT is only payable in TT dollars. And I suspect that's what the minister was alluding to, or part of what he was alluding to. And then they need TT dollars to pay contractors, to pay for goods and services, to pay salaries, to rent cars, to pay for welders to go and weld in their plants and so on. So those are the 2 avenues by which US dollars get to the banks. The second avenue, which is conversion, is the larger of the 2. It is the largest source of US dollars available to local banks. Conversions, not the central bank. So there are 5 energy companies in Trinidad that act almost like the central bank in terms of their supply of US dollars into the commercial banking sector. So the health of the energy sector is directly correlated to the availability of foreign exchange or US dollars in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, I can tell you from where I sit and based on the information that I have, the energy sector is not going to improve anytime soon. Because as you pointed out, the trajectory with production is heading south for both oil and gas, and the trajectory for prices seems to be under pressure for the factors. One, supply is up in non-OPEC countries. Two, Chinese economy is not running as we expected it to run in terms of growth. So their growth is probably 4% when people thought it could have been 7-8%. And then, you know, the final factor, of course, is the Trump factor, where he has pledged to supercharge the American oil and gas industry. And that is going to, because American presidents there are two important deliverables. One is the price of food, and two is the price of fuel. And those are two things that affect the average American, right? Because Americans drive quite a lot, you know, and they like their cars, as you know, it's a car culture country. So those are things that he would be focusing on. So there would be implications for us in Trinidad, negative implications.
As a former energy minister, and you know, you wrote earlier this year that the centerpiece of our energy policy was based upon the Dragon gas deal. Do you think that the government had no other alternatives but for their policy to center on?
Well, so the government has focused a lot of their effort and energy and time on Dragon, Coquina Mannequin, and relations with Venezuela. And in that focus, they spent quite a lot of time lobbying persons in Washington, D.C. to have sanctions, to create to have these OFAC license, right? OFAC is a acronym I keep forgetting, but is Office for Foreign Asset or something like that, right? It's out of the Department of the Treasury, and what those licenses is that they carved out a space in the sanctions that the U.S. had on Venezuela, in which Trinidad, Shell, Venezuela, BP, NGC could operate and be party to the Dragon license and be party to the Coquina Mannequin license. Those OFAC licenses were not infinite. They were for 2 years. I think the first one expires in 2025. Guess who's going to be president of the United States? You got it. And the second one expires, I believe, in 2026. Guess who is president of the United States, right? And what if Marco Rubio is Secretary of State, and he's not, you know, the Maduro administrations are not his favorite people. So that, therefore, as you started off the program, we come back to the beginning of your comment at the program. The answer is yes. The Trump victory, the Trump administration, Trump 2.0, call it whatever you want to call it, he takes office in January, does now impose or layer onto Dragon and Coquina Mannequin another level of uncertainty. On top of which, I am not aware that the Rowley administration, that the visits to Washington and so on, had any sort of significant interaction. I'm not aware that this Rowley administration has any diplomatic bridge. Of course, you could always talk to people in the corridor. You could always say hi, hello on the phone. But building a relationship is a lot deeper than that, right? I am aware that they have strong bonds with persons in the Democratic Party, which have now been rejected and put into opposition, to use the Westminster term. America doesn't use that term. But the Democrats can't help the Trinidad and Tobago government or the Trinidad and Tobago cause with regard to Venezuela again. So the question is, does the government, the current PNM government, have any sort of diplomatic bridge to the Republican Party? And I don't think that if it exists, it's probably very weak. And, you know, I think they had been putting all their emphasis on their contacts in the Democratic Party. They have Ambassador in Port of Spain who will shortly be gone, right? Because that's how it works, right? It's the world of politics. The president is going to put his own person there, President Trump. The last time he had somebody in Port of Spain was a guy named Mr. Joseph Mondello, and he ended up in a big public fight with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy that, over that Delcy Rodriguez issue when her plane landed here during COVID and so on. These are facts. These are not, I'm not making these things up or saying this because I don't like somebody.
That suggests that part of our energy policy now is having to navigate new diplomatic relations in our own foreign policy.
Correct. You summed it up very nicely. And the thing is, I can tell you from my dealings with the United States at the level of the State Department and so on, they don't forget. Because the politicians come and the politicians go in the State Department, but the public servants, just like Trinidad, the public servants in the State Department, they are the ones who write the briefs for the politicians. President Trump is going, when he's about to appoint the ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago, he's going to get a file on his desk called Trinidad and Tobago. And everything is going to be in there, and he's going to spend about 2 minutes flipping through the file. And he'll remember his friend Joseph Mondello, who he sent because they were friends. That's how Mr. Mondello got involved in politics and so on, and he ended up in Trinidad. And he'll remember that incident will be, up in that file. So you are right. So the government now has to build new relations. There's a new ambassador, probably middle of next year. These things have to go through the approval process in the United States Congress and so on. There'll be a new ambassador. There will be new persons to deal with in the State Department and so on. So it's a rebuilding now of relationships that has to take place. And so and then CARICOM on the whole needs to, look at its whole posturing towards President Trump and not see him as an adversary, but see him as somebody who is we will want to work with and so on. So, because he's going to be there for 4 years, and these are 4 critical years for our energy sector and for regional security and so on. There's the issue of.
Let me come back to the point that you were making earlier as well in respect to our foreign exchange supply and what we actually gain from our energy sector. The proposed plan to make energy companies pay USD intact in USD, that does not necessarily help the issue in respect to supply.
No, it doesn't. I don't know where I don't know if people know, but if you tell me energy companies must pay the taxes in US dollars, how were they getting the TTLs in the first place? If they're selling their ammonia and their methanol and the LNG and they're getting US dollars here, how were they getting TTLs? They were selling US dollars to the commercial banks. So now what you're doing is that you're causing them not to sell US dollars to the commercial banks, but to pay those taxes in US dollars. You are merely moving US dollars from one bucket, the commercial bank bucket, into the government bucket. And the government is going to distribute that through the central bank based on their system of how they allocate US dollars, right? So that does not address the underlying structural issue which we have in Trinidad, which is a fall in the supply of US dollars because of falling production of oil, falling production of gas, and as we both observed earlier, the prices are not where we would like them to be. So that to me is the problem which has to be addressed is how do we earn US dollars beyond the current level of earnings? And the only 2 ways to do that: 1, increase production of oil and natural gas, and 2, increase the earnings from the non-energy sector exports. Now that has been, you could call that diversification, and it is. That has been the sort of holy grail that we have been pursuing as a country from time immemorial, since I was a child. I've been hearing about that. But it is something that we have to pursue regardless, because oil and gas is not going to, bail us out forever. And the world is awash with oil and gas. Huh?
Is it an immediate solution, though?
The immediate solution is to increase oil and gas production and to hope that prices improve. But I'm not too sure about that one.
And the nearest is Malati project, of which the Prime Minister is...
The nearest major project, there will be a few minor projects in the next couple of years, SIP from BP, Cascadura from Touchstone and so on. Manatee is a big one out in 2020. Prime Minister says second quarter 2027. It might be third quarter 2027, but around there. And that is not going to be felt in full until 2028. Because if you start something in September 2027, its full impact is not going to be felt until 2028. So we are in, and I'm speaking in concurrence here with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, because Prime Minister said this at a function at Atlantic LNG about a month or two ago, and the Minister of Finance said this in his affidavit in Dure versus the Attorney General. The next couple of years are going to be a difficult time for Trinidad because of these falling production, one. And I personally don't share their optimism that we will come out of this in 2027. I think it's going to take a bit longer than that. I think Manatee is not the magic wand that, you know, transforms Cinderella into the princess. I think Manatee is going to help, but I don't think it's going to be the savior that the government is hoping that it would be.
So, Mr. Ron Reynolds, we're getting to the end of the conversation. Very quickly, I wanted
your
opinion. How do we actually build beyond our energy sector? It takes foreign exchange to diversify, and we don't necessarily have that foreign exchange cash flow. How do we build beyond oil and gas?
Well, that is a very good question, because you just pointed out that, you know, you need foreign exchange to diversify, to buy machinery, to buy equipment. If you want to get into chocolate production, you know, you have to buy machinery and so on. So the Exim Bank has been set up for that purpose, right? To provide support, foreign exchange support for businessmen who want to export non-energy products, like, you know, from the manufacturing sector and so on. But the challenge is a bit deeper than that, because you have a lot of obstacles to businessmen doing a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems with ease of doing business. If you want to get land, for example, from the state to build, let's say you want to build a commercial complex to process some agricultural product and so on to export, you are going to take, how many years are you going to take to get the land from the Commissioner of State Lands? It'll take years. And then your licenses and all these things take years to get. So and this is one thing that President Trump is good at. He being a businessman, he understands that these things are putting obstacles in the path of businessmen and preventing them from investing. And when they invest, they create jobs, they pay taxes, they earn foreign exchange, and there's a virtuous cycle associated with the expansion of the private sector. One of the challenges we have in this country is that we fed people a diet of socialism for a very long time, right? And a lot of our public servants are anti-private sector. And sometimes I feel that you have to say these things, and this is the reality. At school, at university level, and so on, we teach people that business is bad, right? And that, you know, the capitalism is bad and so on. But I mean, what is going to take us out of this problem we have is the expansion of the private sector. So we can't see the private sector as a foe. And the other thing is that the government needs to back out of the economy. The government is involved in too much aspects of this economy. The government is involved in hotel, in gas station, in quarrying, you know. The government is involved in fisheries and so on. The government needs to back out, create economic space for those people who could better and more effectively, efficiently, you know, make use of resources. But we have since 1973 been running commanding heights, where the government controls the commanding heights of the economy. And there's been some, of course, private sector participation in the economy, but we need to look at what Jamaica is doing. You don't have to look too far. Jamaica has one of the most vibrant, robust, growing private sectors. And the evidence of that is in Trinidad. Have you noticed more and more you are seeing Jamaican companies coming to Trinidad and investing?
Yes,
that was never the case 20 years ago. And it's because the Jamaican private sector now has grown to a point where they have enough capital now to look around the region and begin to, and in not too distant future from now, you will see Guyanese private sector companies coming to Trinidad to invest because the capital available to them would have grown. So those are some of the solutions we have. It requires a kind of different level of thinking that I don't think resides in the current government, because they've had 9 years and I don't really see that level of thinking in that government. I see they have their pursued, I mean, if you were to summarize their main economic policies for the last 9 years, that pursuit of Venezuela would have to be in the top 3. Pursuit of Venezuela to get natural gas would have to be in the top 3. But we have to, my view is that we have to create a space for the private sector to really run with the economic growth that we need. And I've always plugged for the maritime sector as being the beacon of growth that could propel this country forward. That's not really being, pursued, in my respectful view.
Well, Mr. Ramnaran, I want to thank you very much for
joining. Thank you very much, Mr. Shah. And sorry for the slightly late start.
No worries at all. It's always a pleasure having you. And, well, hopefully looking forward to another discussion with more positive. Yeah? Definitely.
Have a good day.
All the best to you, sir. Take care. All the best. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime. Before we go, though, that last point in particular by Mr. Ramnaran, throughout this discussion, we have fed our population a mixture of socialism, and we have made capitalism seem like a negative thing. The government has been too involved in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, too involved. That point, ladies and gentlemen, is hitting home even harder, more and more now in 2024 and in time to come. Unless things change, that is a very difficult pill to swallow, but one that we have to start discussing and accepting. Let's take a break on AM Prime.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us this morning. Jumping ahead to our final conversation, I spoke earlier of this bounce mentality. I'm speaking about pedestrians and pedestrian safety. And oftentimes you see it, by the way, in respect to a prime example is by the Port of Spain market. A couple years ago, a mother and her 2 daughters were knocked down by a speeding vehicle driven by, I believe at that time, it was an off-duty police officer. There were protests that took place. The government built a walkover. And it seems as though nobody uses that walkover at all. That walkover exists, but it's there for the use of the public who protested it, and it's not being used. But I raise that point as an example of pedestrian safety and needing to be responsible in their everyday travels. But a part of that as well is drivers adhering to the speed limits. Speed limits is one thing, but it's driving for everyone else on the road, driver responsibility. So let's welcome back to AM Prime, the president of Arrive Alive TNT, Ms. Sharon Inglefield. Good morning, Ms. Inglefield. How are you?
Good morning. Fine. Thank you. Thank you for having Arrive Alive on your program this morning.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program, as always. Well, that comment in respect to pedestrian safety and, of course, driver responsibility as well. TNT is seeing a number of road traffic accidents this year, and it seems quite a few of them also are not necessarily reported in mainstream media. But we have had a number of road fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, of course. What is happening across our roads in TNT? Is it road infrastructure? Is it lighting? Or is it just an ignorance of the law and the speeding limits that exist?
We believe it's all of the above. Yes, I do agree that some pedestrians have this bounce me down attitude. They don't like to use the walkovers. I certainly see it every day when I'm on the nation's roads. So I personally have that experience as well. However, infrastructure and road network also changes behavior. And for a very long time, our pedestrians have had to walk on the road because there are open manholes, there's rubble on the pavements, we now call them sidewalks. You know, there's bush. You know, it's very difficult. I mean, I challenge anyone to walk from home to work, from home with your children to school, from home to market and back again, and see whether we can use a safe pavement. It's very, very difficult. So over time, we've practiced bad habits. And I think that has a lot to do with it, that bounce me down attitude, the lack of respect for pedestrians, the lack of respect for pedestrians, for drivers, because they you know, cross the road with that bounce me down attitude. So unfortunately, it's lawlessness, all around lawlessness. And but we, you know, we can't just give up. We have to continue. And I do believe that all the research has shown us that good infrastructure, well-maintained infrastructure, changes behavior. So once again, we make an appeal this morning to pedestrians to use the sidewalks. We originally call them pavements, and to the Ministry of Works and Transport to please provide safe infrastructure for pedestrians to go to and from. I think we've counted 44 pedestrian deaths for the year. So that is over a 62% increase from last year. That's a huge increase. We have more pedestrians dying at this stage than even drivers. So it's a very, very concerning statistic. Arrive Alive does not talk from their gut. We do our research. We try to get data to support the information that we have, the opinions that we have. So we're appealing to pedestrians this morning to really be safe on the nation's roads. Look right, look left, look right again before you step off that sidewalk. Wear bright colors, make eye contact with the drivers, and don't cross unless it's safe. Cross at pedestrian crossings. You know, very, very important. And the ministry, we appeal again for safe pedestrian crossings, well painted, you know, thermoplastic paint, so it doesn't rub off very easily. It doesn't come off very easily. Very good paint to be used is the thermoplastic paint. Signage, lighting, rails guiding pedestrians to pedestrian crosswalks, so they're not tempted to cross anywhere other than a crosswalk. We would like to see these pedestrian crossings raised. We would like to see chicades which narrow the roads, narrow the main roads, so the traffic is forced to slow down. It's called traffic calming devices. Very, very important. We start to use traffic calming devices on our main roads where we've had these fatalities, because we've had several fatalities on main roads and some on our highways.
Any particular reasoning or research behind why more so on main roads than on highways? Is it because of more pedestrian foot traffic?
Certainly more pedestrian foot traffic. You have schools, you have businesses, you have residential, you know, homes, you have churches, you have, in some cases, hospitals, doctors' offices, you know, so it's a toing and froing. And if we're not making wide enough pedestrian crossings, if we're not making them more visible with proper signage, lighting, and as I say, paint, even rails to guide pedestrians to these, we're not going to change the behavior, because we've practiced bad behavior of crossing anywhere on a main road for years, you know, so that we have to change that behavior. And it's very difficult, as you know, to change adult behavior. So we need to make a start. When we see this kind of increase, there are interventions, and it's very, very important that we make our roads more forgiving so that we're not losing lives, we're not injuring our citizens, we're not, you know, drivers need to slow down. We need to change the speed limits in our view. You know, in first world countries, if you travel anywhere in a first world country, especially in Europe, in Australia, in Canada, the speed limits go right down to almost 30 kilometers an hour, where you have pedestrian traffic. And that means that the cars are forced to slow down. The spot speed cameras pick them up. They're given tickets, they're given penalty points if you're not slowing down, because on these main roads with heavy pedestrian traffic, it's a disaster. So we need to slow down. Drivers need to slow down, and this is why we're making an appeal to reduce the speed limit. The community engagement is obvious. However, the community needs to be the pedestrians. The community needs to be the pedestrians when you're constructing $1 million walkover. The community needs to be the pedestrians when you're creating the crosswalk. Where's the crosswalk going? Look at the history of where people are crossing the roads, and that's where you put the crosswalk. Very, very important that we try to put the crosswalk where we have a history, where we have, the pedestrian having crossed at that particular intersection or that particular part of the main road for years. So that's very important. Yes, we agree community engagement is a must.
So I know you mentioned the having to review the speed limit, particularly on main roads. Reducing it is one thing. Adherence is another, because you yourself just mentioned it's so difficult to change adult behavior. So let's look at the last part, enforcement. Is more needed to actually enforce the traffic laws, particularly the speed limit in Trinidad and Tobago. We see officers on the highway at times. What about on the main roads?
I agree, we need more enforcement, but the officers are worn thin. So we also need the technology to support the officers. We need the officers, yes, out there with the breathalyzers and the speed guns, but we also would like to see the technology, long overdue, those spot speed cameras. We need the operationalization of those spot speed cameras that were supposed to be imported. And here in Trinidad, we need to see the operationalization of those spot speed cameras, because the risk increases. There's no doubt about it. When the speed increases, the risk to drivers, the risk to passengers, the risk to pedestrians, and the risk to cyclists. We've seen a number of motorcyclist collisions as well this year. We've had 5 motorcyclists collision fatalities, I should say, not collisions, fatalities. We've had many more collisions. And although there's been a decrease in biker fatalities, 5 is still too many. It means 5 more families grieving again this year. So we want to protect particularly our vulnerable road users who can't afford to buy a private vehicle, who are walking, who are cycling. We're seeing more and more men in the streets cycling every day. And therefore we want to protect the motorcyclists, the cyclists and the pedestrians by having that technology, those spot speed cameras out there, the red light camera, detection at the intersections. We need to see those out there, as well as, of course, our police officers with the speed guns and the breathalyzers. Very, very important. Education is also very important, and we need to see a more robust licensing system where our drivers are taught defensive driving, risk assessment. That should all be made mandatory, both theoretical and practical. It's imperative that education is coupled with enforcement. Very, very important. And then, of course, the infrastructure, the proper planning, design, and maintenance of our nation's roads and its infrastructure.
So I was actually about to mention education as well. That's a very important point, because all of us have a role to play in this. Not just a matter of the government and the police enforcing systems. It's a massive TNTs and our citizens, our responsibility as well. That being said, do you think that defensive driving is not mandatory at this point? So of course it's really upon us to take it on ourselves to do that, to get that certification. However, do you think it's something that should be made mandatory? Do you think that even things such as in-car cameras, dashboard dash cams or rear view cams, is that something that also needs to be made mandatory, or should be considered at least?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the dash cams. The dash cams are great to pick up collisions and all of that. I do believe in technology, the spot speed cameras and the red light cameras, as well as the speed guns. I also do believe in education, a more robust licensing system where we teach the novice drivers from the start how to assess risks, how to drive defensively, so that even when we have someone opening a car door and you're driving along a main road, or a pedestrian running in front of a car, or a cyclist. How do we traverse the roads in the event of all the different types of traffic or the different types of distractions on the nation's road? I think it's really important we teach drivers from the very beginning how to drive defensively. So therefore, it should be part of our licensing system. And the one good thing about that penalty point system, part of it is the re-education of our drivers. So the drivers who continue to commit and break the law by driving on a priority bus route, by speeding, by driving under the influence of alcohol. We've had a lot of magistrates, thank God, sending drivers who are under the influence to re-educate themselves on the dangers of driving when you're impaired. So the courts are doing a great job of sending driver offenders for community service to Arrive Alive and for defensive driving, also to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think that should continue. I also think the re-education of drivers through the penalty point system is another good way of enforcing our laws, because with the crime, the police cannot be everywhere. They are on the ball, and we've seen a number of DUI, drivers losing their license, which means they now have a criminal record, which is something that's very serious. It's not a ticketable offense, it's a criminal offense. So we've seen a number of DUI drivers coming to us for rehabilitation. We're hearing about them going for defensive driving courses, as well as drivers who have lost their license by the penalty point system. So there is a re-education, and I compliment the ministry with regards to that. Excellent that those two things are happening, and that's part of the laws and the policies that the ministry have brought in over the years.
So coming back to Arrive Alive TNT, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned that Arrive Alive doesn't speak from its gut. It does a lot of research. And the work that Arrive Alive TT does, really, it's incredible. Hence why we welcome Arrive Alive TT to AM Prime. That being said, are you being consulted? Is the information that you'll gather and research that is done, is it being shared and disseminated through all channels so people have an understanding and an idea? And by extension, authorities consulting Arrive Alive TNT when they do their research and they put forward proposals for solutions?
Well, we certainly can network much better. I mean, it's all a work in progress, and there is a National Road Safety Council that we have a seat on. Obviously, the ministry has a lot of work on its hands at all times with regards, transportation and all the work that they do. So certainly we can meet plenty more often. We need to be consulted more about, things like raising speed limits, because we were absolutely against raising speed limits. To raise speed limits, it means you have to have an educated driver. You have to have perfect infrastructure, in our view, before we raise a speed limit. I certainly believe that raising the speed limits was not the right thing to do. So more consultation before action is required, definitely. And we would like to meet much more with all the stakeholders. And there are many stakeholders with regards to road safety. There's the regional corporations, because they look after our sidewalks and our pavements. There's the utilities, Ministry of Utilities, with regards where they place electricity poles. If it's too close to traffic, it becomes a hazard. So there are many ministries. The Ministry of Health should be tracking this data as well, and we hope that they are. The newspapers, the media is another stakeholder where we track data. The TTPS, the Ministry of Works and Transport. So there are many. There's ATIC, the insurance industry. There are many stakeholders. I'm sure I've left out a few. And then of course we have people with disabilities and the blind, so who want to be considered with regards safe infrastructure. So that there are many stakeholders. So, it is a work in progress to get us all together, to meet regularly. But certainly more communication is critical to save lives.
Ms. Inglefield, I really want to thank you for joining us on the program this morning. I think these conversations are necessary to drive away drones. And of course, the increase in pedestrian fatalities is very, very worrisome. The year isn't over as yet, and we all share concerns in that. But for the solutions and the proposals put forward on your part and Arrival ICNTT Sport, we thank you very much. And, you know, hopefully we see a couple months ahead with better news as it relates to road safety. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. And I just want to say we would like to see everyone come out Sunday, November the 17th, the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, to walk, ride, and cycle with us at the Savannah at 7 a.m. You know, this is in memory of all those who have lost their lives and those who have been injured. So we would really like to see TNT come out in your numbers. To be educated, we're going to have lots of flyers and booklets to give away, educating the public on safe driving habits, as well as lots of fun things for the children, face painting and bouncy castle and pedestrian road safety. And, you know, the families, we want the families to see that we care, that we genuinely care. So let's all come out in support of those who have lost their lives and those who have been injured. Sunday the 17th at 7 a.m. opposite TGIF at the Savannah.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Inglefield, and all the very best to you and the entire team.
Thank you.
Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, that concludes this morning's edition of AM Prime. To Ms. Inglefield and the entire team at Arrival Live TNT, once more we thank you, and of course to Mr. Kevin Ramler, and we thank him for joining us on the program. At the NPTA, we weren't able to have that discussion this morning, but believe me, there will be time, as always, for the NPTA later on this week to speak about this Adopt a School program. So, of course, I look forward to that conversation. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's the start of a new week. And with that, let's hope it brings new opportunity and new hope. And at times we find it challenging, but let's try our very best to make it work for ourselves. With that being said, all the very best to you. May it be a safe week, a productive week, and may we all do our part in making TNT a bit sweeter. I'm Keaton Shaw reminding you today is a good day to have a good day. And I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
WESN.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build